Hey guys, welcome Game back today, bringing out a video for our weapon conversion series. And today we're going to be taking the brand new weapon released here in Season 5, being the AN-94, and turning it into the more so production released version of the AN-94. I'm just going to show you the weapon overall, so maybe not a typical weapon conversion, but we're going to build this weapon. I'm going to show you a lot of the key features, and then we'll go into the real-life design differences with this weapon that makes it very unique from other Russian rifles and other rifles in general. So let's go ahead and back out, and we'll get right into it. So here is our final design for the Avtomat Nikonov model of 1994, or the AN-94. So first off, let's go ahead and back out, and we'll go to the Battle Pass here for Season 5. And you'll be able to see you are able to unlock this at Tier 31. So this is the second weapon unlocked behind the ISO or the APC-9. Again, the AN-94 at Tier 31. So let's go ahead now, and we'll go back to our custom game where we have this pre-built. So we will go to our weapon, and here we are. So I have a couple of them built, but let's go ahead and strip this down to base. So we'll build this from the base. So first off, what we're going to want to do is for the muzzle device. The AN-94 has a very specific muzzle device, or a muzzle brake. Here in game, it's called the sonic brake for the AN-94. So this is going to assist with the recoil stabilization, the cons being the ADS speed and the aiming stability. So this actually interacts and helps out with the hyper burst mode of this weapon for that 2-round burst, and I'll explain that once we get into the gameplay, but this is a key component for the AN-94 to work the way it does with that 2-round burst functionality. We'll go ahead and select that. Now we're going to leave the base barrel. We do have some options here for a 330mm, a 438mm, and a shorter barrel here. Doesn't quite give us the length on it, but in real life, the AN-94 has a 15.9-inch barrel, so it seems to be that the base barrel is intermediary between these two. So it's going to give us around a 15.9 or a 16-inch barrel at base. So we're actually going to leave the base barrel for this weapon. Now for the laser, just for cosmetic purposes, I'm going to go with a tack laser. Again, this is going to assist with the ADS speed, aiming stability, and the aim walking steadiness. The con just that the laser is visible when you are ADSing. But you'll notice here, unlike the AK-47, we do not have the canted mounted laser light. We do have an actual Raptor, the tan Raptor light type laser here mounted on the right Picatinny rail, which is really nice to see. It gives it a much more modernized look to the weapon, which is really nice. Definitely one of my favorite aspects of this weapon. So we'll go ahead and select that. Now for the optic, you'll see me play around with a few different ones here. First off, at base, we're going to go with just a standard Russian optic, being the Cobra sight or the Viper in game. But another unique optic that this weapon has, and first, one thing to note that this has that the AK-47 does not, is a 4x flip, which is interesting. And then as well, we have a very unique Russian night vision scope here for this, being the POS M3 thermal. So you can see the description here: advanced 3.25 Gen 3 night vision with thermal overlay enhanced situational awareness. So I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to be specifically in real life for the Russian night vision optic. I believe it's something around a TLF 640 Mark II smart thermal, which is a newer version of some of their optics. Again, this is more night vision though, but you'll see a little bit of this in the gameplay. I'll run this as well, but you can just see how that looks. Very nice looking thermal optic for this weapon. So again, we'll go ahead and go back to our Cobra sight or our Viper optic. It's going to just assist with precision sight picture, the con being the ADS speed. Now for the stock, we're actually going to want that production version of the stock. So the production models, you can see at base, we just have a standard stock here, option here, which we saw on the prototypes. And then for a production version, we had this very unique looking buttstock here, the AN-94 Factory Heavy. This is going to assist with the aiming stability, as well as the cons being the aim walking movement speed. Now again, this is going to give us that unique clubfoot-like buttstock on this weapon, which we saw with the production versions of the AN-94. So we'll go ahead and select that. Now next up, we only have room for one more attachment. We're going to skip out on everything else and just go for the underbarrel. We're going to run the Commando foregrip. Now one thing to note here, we have M203s versus the GP series of grenade launchers that the Russians use, and you can see how that adds the bottom Picatinny, adds more Picatinnies to the weapon. You can just see how that looks pretty cool like that. And then again, we're just going to go with the Commando, but you can see there's really no other unique features to this. Everything else looks as you would expect. So we're going to go ahead and run a Commando for this build, just to keep a low profile and maintain the look of the real AN-94. Now, some other things here to just review. For the stock options, we have the one that we're reviewing here, the Factory Heavy. We also have the Forge Tac Ultralight, the folded stock, which I'll show you a little bit of a preview of that in game, just inspecting the weapon. Now that we do have weapon inspects, we'll inspect this with a couple different attachments just so you guys can see some nice looking builds. You can see that's a much better option. Really quick, if I just preview this, much better option than the no stock, where you get that nipple on the back of the weapon, which they've seemed to have done with a lot of the weapons of the past. So it's good to see that they finally are taking advantage of the folding stock option. Much more authentic look to this weapon. I really like that option. Now, rear grips, nothing special. Nothing special with the perks. There's no hyper burst or a burst perk on this weapon. It's all going to be select fire, so you can select from full auto to the 2-round burst in game. Grips, again, nothing special. Ammunition, so this is unique. This weapon fires 5.5 by 39, just like the AK-74 series of rifles. And we have at base a 30-round transparent magazine, which you can see there. We also have the RPK 45-round magazine of the 5.5 by 39, and we finally have a 60-round casket magazine. Again, this is a quad stack, 60-round 5.5 by 39 millimeter. So we finally get a viable 5.45 weapon in game, especially for Warzone, which I'm looking forward to seeing. Now, I will be live tonight on YouTube for live stream, so be sure to check that out tonight around 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I'll be using this weapon in Warzone, and we'll be getting hopefully some good games with this. But again, you can see at base we have the transparent magazine. You can see how that looks. Now, it is canted. Take a look at that. It is a canted magazine to the right. Now, that's very vital. I'll go in when I explain more about the weapon in the gameplay. I'll show you show you why that is when I explain it. Other than that, everything very similar. You have the select fire switch on the left-hand side. The only difference is it has prototype sights on there. You can see if I were to just remove the optic here, it does have prototype top-mounted iron sights versus the production version, which had the iron sights on the right-hand side, and you had a couple different options, I believe, just like some of the old H&K weapons, where you could swap between 7 different iron sights there on the rear. And then again, we have a little bit of a different iron sights there on the front of the barrel as well. But again, that's really this weapon as a whole. Let's go ahead and put our Cobra sight back on there. Now, for camouflage, you can just see really quick how these look. Pretty cool. If I go ahead and look at something like the Spetsnaz Red, we have a couple different, so it looks pretty neat overall. Again, in reticles, we're just going to leave the base for this. So again, this is the AN-94, the Avtomat Nikonov, model 1994. We have that canted magazine on the weapon. Let's go ahead now and jump into the gameplay. We'll go ahead and check out the recoil patterns on this weapon. And first off, what you'll notice is the recoil pattern is going to be largely, if I go full auto, it's going to be vertical and then a little bit to the right. So pretty easy to control on full auto. And then you'll see me make the transition to leaving it on full auto and just tap firing to utilize that 2-round burst perk. And again, pretty easy to control like that. And then when we select fire to the actual burst perk, or select fire to what would typically be single fire on other weapons, it's going to give us that 2-round burst. And you can see it's actually a little bit difficult to control with the attachments I have on. You can definitely put on different attachments to make this more viable. I've used this in multiplayer quite a bit already, and I like to switch between the two. However, I'm not sure which is better, just a tap fire on full auto, or go to the burst perk if you are, or select fire to the burst if you are utilizing the weapon at longer ranges. Other than that, I think that's really it for this weapon. Now you can see the weapon previews here, the weapon just showing how nice this looks and aesthetically pleasing. I have a couple different builds that I'll show off here just with different attachments, just so you guys can see how aesthetically pleasing this weapon is. Now, one thing to note really quick before I get into the explanations and the gameplay is that the magazine, again, being that cannon-mounted magazine, but again, it is transparent. Now you can see the rounds in there. Now, doing the weapon inspects, as you shoot the weapon and empty the magazine, when you have an empty magazine or you have a few rounds left in the magazine, if you inspect the weapon, you'll be able to actually see those rounds diminish, and when you are empty, there will be no more rounds and you'll have an empty magazine. You'll just be able to see the springs inside the magazine. So that's a really cool feature. Really like that. And again, nice attention to detail with this. I believe the other transparent magazines that we have with the M13 and even the Hoger 26, you cannot see that. So that's a pretty nice to see. Now, getting into the gameplay for this, first off, we'll explain how this weapon works. So this is actually probably one of the most complicated weapons ever created. Now, how this works, again, very complicated. We have the sonic brake for the muzzle device for this, and this actually worked to help us with that 2-round burst perk, or the hyper burst as it's called here in game. So the whole idea behind the Avtomat Nikonov. Again, it was not developed by Kalashnikov. It is a Nikonov rifle. This was actually developed to replace the AK-74 series of rifles. And again, this was developed in the early 90s, and it was actually adopted, but again, in limited use because of how expensive and difficult and complex the weapon was. Production ceased in 2006, but it did succeed at its job, and that was to have a weapon that allowed soldiers who had made perhaps less special forces training to get more shots on target. So the idea behind this is 2-round burst, and you'll only feel the recoil of 1 shot after 2 bullets have already left the weapon. So to do this, again, we have that sonic brake there, as well as we have a gas system inside, very similar to somewhat of an AK visually, but very different. There's also some pulleys inside, very complex. I won't get too in-depth because it's going to be like a 30-minute video if I did that. But high level, what's happening is you pull the trigger, the round is fired. Now the gas system starts to move, and it also works in the sonic brake. So it'll trap the gas in there and start reciprocating the barrel. But while that's happening, the bolt is going to move independently. So the bolt will move back, eject the first round. Now the magazine, which is canted, again, it's canted like that for a reason, because there's, picture like a loading tray in the rifle where a bullet will be sitting, and once that bolt goes back, it'll eject the first cartridge, and then that other bullet that's sitting outside the magazine in the loading tray will be pulled in. The bolt will go forward. Now at this time, we have a reciprocating barrel on this weapon. So the reciprocating barrel is now just starting to move because the gas is cycling in that sonic brake separately of the gas system and the bolt. So now at this time, the barrel will start to move back, and then the bolt will start to move back, and then it'll fire the second round. And at that time, the reciprocating barrel and the bolt are in tune. The second cartridge will be ejected. The bolt will hit the back, and that will cause the recoil, which the user will feel. And then everything's lined up again. So when you go full auto after that, if you fire the first 2 shots are going to be that hyperburst, and then everything is the reciprocating barrel and the bolt and the gas system are all lined up at this point after those first 2 shots, and it's going to fire at a slower, more manageable 600 rounds per minute. So in real life, and with the hyperburst or the 2-round burst feature, the rate of fire is going to be a whopping 1,800 rounds per minute, and when it's in full auto, it's going to be 600 rounds per minute. So very, very complicated. Hopefully I explained that as high level and clearly as I could. Again, if I were to get more in depth about it, it would be a very long and boring video. There's actually a pulley system in the weapon, which is independent, almost very similar. A lot of people think it's like a counterbalance recoil system like we saw in the AEK or the 107s and 108s, but it's actually different. It's not to counterbalance the recoil. It's to pull the bolt separately of the reciprocating barrel and the gas system to allow for that hyperburst feature of the weapon. So pretty complex. Hopefully I explained that correctly and didn't stumble over my words too much and confuse some things, because again, it is very complex. But again, the AN-94 Abakan, so it did win the Abakan race, which is very similar to like the Ratnik trials or the GRAU program, the GRAU designation. So the Abakan is what it won to replace the AK-74 series of rifles. And again, it was formally adopted. However, it saw limited use because of, as I said, how complex the weapon is, how hard it is to maintain, and again, very expensive given all that goes into this weapon, because when you take the dust cover off and disassemble it, it is very complex inside. So this saw service 1997 through present. Again, production was halted in 2006, although it is still used in some instances by Spetsnaz and Russian units. Again, this was mainly for regular Russian army, but again, more expensive than the AK-74s, and then you had the AK-101 series that came out after this, which ended up replacing this and stayed the main battle rifle the assault rifle for the Russian army until it was replaced by the AK-15 and AK-12 series. So designer, again, not Kalashnikov, it's Gennadiy Nikonov, and the design was 1980 through 94, where it saw production in 1994, service 1997 through present. Manufacturer was Izhmash. The production year, again, 1994 through 2006, where production was then halted. The mass of the weapon is going to be 3.85 kilograms or 8.49 pounds. The length overall with the stock extended is going to be 37.1 inches. And again, that's including the barrel length of 15.9 or 405 millimeters. The cartridge, which is fired, is going to be a 5.45 by 39 millimeters, same as the AK-74 series of rifles and the AK-12s. And that's why we have the 45-round RPK magazine, as well as the 60-round quad stack casket magazine on this weapon, which is really good to see, making it more viable in Warzone. Rate of fire, again, with that 2-round hyperburst is going to be 1,800 rounds per minute, or 600 rounds at fully automatic. The muzzle velocity is going to be 900 meters per second, or 2,953 feet per second. And the effective range for this rifle is going to be 700 meters. And the feed system, again, in real life is going to be 30, 45, or the quad-stacked 60-round casket magazine, which is exactly what we see here in this game. It's also the sights, again, the iron sights are different here in game versus in real life, but it is able to mount a variety of Russian optics, night vision scopes, which we see those options here in game. So this is the AN-94, the Avtomat Nikonov, model of 1994. Let me know what you guys think of this weapon. Hope this is a very complex weapon. I'm really excited to use this in Warzone. So again, I will be streaming tonight if you want to stop by and see that at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've used this quite a bit in multiplayer also, and it is a lot of fun to use. Still trying to get the hang of which is better to utilize, the 2-round burst or the full auto and just tap fire it. But as I level this up further, we'll have more information as to how it best works in multiplayer and then also in Warzone, which I hope to use tonight. So let me know down below what you guys think of Season 5, what you guys think of the AN-94, and I'll leave you with that. Until next time, this is Buffner Gaming with the Avtomat Nikonov, model of 1994. Till next time, Buffner Gaming, out.